live from Clemson, South Carolina. This is the Cost Sports Show. Hi everybody, and welcome back, of course, for another episode of the Cost Sports Show. I am your host for the evening, Andrew Coster, and tonight we are going to be going over the third college football playoff rankings of the 2017 season. There were some big changes this week with some teams, of course, losing last week, and two teams that were in the college football playoff top four last week are no longer there. See what happened to Georgia and Notre Dame these past weekends, and of course, what are their chances of potentially getting back in? And of course, we'll also talk about all the big games as a whole that had a huge impact on the playoff rankings, including Miami, Notre Dame, Georgia, Auburn, Iowa, Wisconsin, Oklahoma, TCU, and Alabama, Mississippi State. And of course, I'll also be talking about my Heisman update. It's really not going to be too much different. Baker Mayfield seems like he's running away with it, but I will talk more on that. There is a change-up of who else is in the hunt for it in my rankings. I'll go over that. And of course, Week 12. We'll be going over my picks for that. Not really much of a preview this week, just because it's more of a cakewalk schedule. A lot of teams playing cupcakes. There's only one top 25 matchup, but I will be, of course, giving you my picks. But anyway, let's get to it. Now, the college football playoff rankings came out about, what was it? I think 9:45-ish or so Eastern time. So about almost an hour ago here on the East Coast. So I was going to have Blake Harris from Harris Highlights here to do talk about these rankings with me, but unfortunately he had some stuff come up. No hard feelings though, Blake. And I know you've got a life of a college student just like I do. So anyway, enough of that. I'm going to go over, but we're going to talk about these rankings now. So, in case you all haven't seen, if you're watching this on YouTube, I will have these up by now. First, Alabama. Second, Clemson. Third, Miami. Fourth, Oklahoma. And then 5, Wisconsin. And 6, Auburn. I'm not going to lie. I was surprised by Clemson being up at 2. And this is coming from a hardcore Clemson fan. I don't think Clemson should be 2. I'm going to start off that right now. I don't think Clemson should be 2. And here's why. They lately have not been looking good. They barely escaped at NC State. Now, of course, NC State's a good team, but they struggled last weekend against Florida State. And I don't know. Clemson's just not playing like the number 2 team in the country right now. I really don't see it. But I do also get why they put them at 2. And there's a lot of good stuff to support that. They have 6 wins over teams with winning records, 3 of which are on the road, Virginia Tech, Louisville, and NC State. And also they have the best win out of anybody in the top 6 with that home win against Auburn, which is looking better and better and better. Wow, I never realized how big of a factor that game would come in. I thought, honestly, after Auburn lost to LSU that they were going to be off. I really thought that there was no chance for them to get in. But this past weekend against Georgia, I stand corrected. That was a very impressive performance by Auburn offensively and defensively. And, I'm not going to lie. It's going to be a no-brainer. If they went out, they're in. They're not going to keep out the SEC champion, whether it be Alabama, Georgia, or Auburn. Of course, Alabama will have to win out. And, of course, Georgia will also have to win out to make sure that happens. But, of course, Auburn will too. But, it's just crazy. It's just crazy to see how much that Auburn win for Clemson has helped them. But personally, I would have put them at 4. I would have put Miami at 2 and Oklahoma at 3. Just because you look at what Miami did this past weekend to who was at the time third-ranked Notre Dame, 41-8. And they didn't score, I don't think, till the fourth quarter Notre Dame did. That was impressive, Miami. And wow, this is a Miami team. These past 2 weeks, I wanted to see if they were the real deal. I didn't think they were coming into those 2 weeks. Heck, even before last week, I still wasn't impressed with them. Now I'm very impressed with them, and that is awesome. And it's awesome. It's good. I'm glad to see the U is back. Almost. They still need to win the ACC before we can officially say the U is back. And that's not going to be easy because they will have to play Clemson in the ACC championship game December 2nd in Charlotte. And that's going to be tough. But they're still, they now are easily deserve to be in the top 4. I never thought I would be saying this in Mark Richt's second year. It's crazy. But this defense is you could say they're the best right now in the country. I mean, heck, they forced 4 turnovers against Notre Dame, and I think was it 4 against Virginia Tech. That turnover chain, man. As much as I hate that thing, I think has been a huge part of why Miami's just been getting after. I don't know. It's just crazy to see how much a little turnover chain, little prop would do so much for a program. But Miami's just looked, these past 2 weeks, they've looked great. I mean, you look at their overall resume, though, and compared to Clemson's, it's still, I don't think, quite as good. Because they snuck by Syracuse. Yes, Clemson lost to Syracuse. But Miami didn't, beat Syracuse by a lot. They snuck by them. They snuck by Georgia Tech. They snuck by Florida State. Hey, and I think that's kind of also what's putting them behind Clemson. And with Oklahoma, here's the problem. It's the same old story, but I will say it was better last weekend. Defense is the problem for Oklahoma, and that is why they are not higher yet. Now, I'll give them credit. They held TCU to 20 points last week. They did also give up over 400 yards, but I will give them credit where it's due. They did hold them to 20 points, and they tore up a very good TCU defense, over 500 yards and 38 points. So I knew Oklahoma at least deserved to be in the top 4. Heck, I had them at 3. Like I said, I have them against Clemson, ahead of Clemson. But then you also look, they had some shaky games too against Baylor and Kansas State. They were kind of iffy. And of course, they lost to Iowa State at home, and that loss is starting to look bad again. Iowa State lost again. They're now 6-4. It's starting to look worse and worse. I mean, to be fair though, I will say this about Iowa State. They're kind of reminding me of Pittsburgh from last year against Clemson. Just because they were average. They were all right. They had 2 wins against teams in the top 5. Iowa State, I mean, at the time when they beat those teams, they were in the top 5. And of course, though, Iowa State still beat Oklahoma and they beat TCU. But it's looking worse and worse just because these last 2 leagues they've lost, and doesn't look good for Oklahoma. They need Iowa State to win out if they want to make that loss look better. Of course, people are going to bring up the Syracuse loss for Clemson. I get it. It was bad. Even if Clemson's quarterback was hurt, that didn't cost them the game. Their defense cost them that game. But in my opinion, though, a thing that's kind of more strange for me is how obvious people say Alabama should be number 1. A lot of people did. It's not an obvious choice. I don't know if anyone else watched this Alabama game against Mississippi State this past weekend. This did not look like the same Alabama team we've seen earlier this year. They didn't. Their defense just did not look as good. And neither did their offense. I mean, Calvin Ridley is basically right now a lifesaver. Is right now the savior for that offense. And you saw in this past game, he had half the team's receptions. Don't get me wrong, Calvin Ridley's a great player, but they are relying too much on him, and it's going to hurt them down the stretch. And with Alabama as a whole, their defense, yes, I get that. They got a lot of injuries. Clemson has a lot of injuries on defense, too. It's next man up. I mean, Alabama is as deep as anybody is in the country. You look and see, they get 5-star recruits left and right, 4 and 5-star recruits left and right. So basically, all those people on the bench are also 4 and 5-star recruits to next man up. They should be ready to go. I get that, though. It's not your starters. It's not like a 5-star recruit is still not going to be quite as good as Mika Fitzpatrick. I get that. And they also have 4 of their best linebackers out as well, and that's hurting them too. We saw it this past weekend. And I think if they don't get healthy on the defensive side of the ball, they are in trouble against Auburn, because Auburn showed that they could run the ball and they could throw the ball. And Jared Stidham is starting to play very well for them. So if I'm Alabama, you better hope they get it together, because otherwise, they're not going to even make it to the SEC championship game. Of course, I've seen they're still, I think, a 1 or 1.5 point favorite right now at Auburn. I personally wouldn't do that right now. I mean, Auburn's right now the hottest team in the country, no doubt about that, with that win against Georgia. I mean, actually, I'll tie that. Them and Miami both for the hottest teams in the country. And I'll put Oklahoma right behind them on the hotness, just because their defense hasn't been playing as good as Auburn or Miami's defense. But another thing that's also on this thing, going away from the top 10, another thing I've noticed on this list that finally, UCF made the top 15 finally. It's about time they made the top 15. Heck, they should be even higher in my opinion. The fact that it took them this long to make the top 15 is, I don't like it. They have just as good of a resume as Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's 5. You're telling me a team that has the same number of wins against the top 25, and I think actually who has more wins against teams with winning records, should be behind Wisconsin just because they're Power 5? Like their win's actually better because it's against 21 Memphis, whereas Wisconsin's was number 23 Northwestern. You're telling me that Central UCF should not be at least in the top 10? I'd put them over Penn State, who's sitting there at 10 any day. Maybe not Ohio State, but definitely Penn State. Penn State's just falling off. There's no way they're making the playoff. They're just not good. I wrote them off. Everyone else should have kind of written them off. I just don't see it in them anymore. Being undefeated, I get it. You're a group of 5. And it's that the game they canceled against Georgia Tech is really hurting them. Because Georgia Tech has been a very solid team. Heck, they're the closest anyone's, I think, gotten to beating Miami besides Florida State. And that win would have actually really helped them. It stinks for them that they can't reschedule that game. Because honestly, I'm not saying they would have been in the playoff spot. They would at least, I think, be in the top 10 with that win again. Assuming they had beaten Georgia Tech. There's no guarantee they would have beaten Georgia Tech. But assuming in the sense they beat Navy, who runs a triple option just like Georgia Tech, I think they would have, personally. But we won't know. We never know. But then, like I said, I think personally they should be in the top 10. Committee disagrees with me. And like I said, this is the first time really I've disagreed with the committee on some stuff. Heck, I mean, Michigan being also at 24, I get why they had to put them in there at that point, because they only have 2 losses on the year. They actually don't, I think, if I read this correctly, they don't have any wins against teams with winning records. Their 2 losses were to Michigan State and Penn State. I mean, the Michigan State game was pretty close. I'll give them that. But the Penn State game, they just got destroyed. And this person, in my opinion, they are still, I would maybe even keep them out of the top 25. Yeah, you can't help who you play, but you got to beat at least the good teams on your schedule. You got blown out by Penn State. You lost to Michigan State too. Your offense is still absolutely terrible. I personally don't see them in the top 25. And yes, and Wisconsin also, like I said, is thanking the Lord again that they're in the top 25, because now they have another chance to be the team in the top 25. And also, they'll notice how Iowa's gone. Bye-bye. We'll talk about that game later. And Michigan's probably going to be gone after this week. I don't see them any way or form that they probably will beat Wisconsin. If they do, what will I do? I need to figure out something to do if that happens. I'll figure that out later. Or, I don't know. Heck, maybe I should go streaking or something like that. That's how confident I am in them not beating them. Heck, but then, I'd be okay with Jim Harbaugh proving me wrong. No, I don't want to go streaking, but I will say that. If Michigan beats Wisconsin, I will go streaking down my street. How about that? Okay? God, I cannot believe I'm saying this on my show. This is what's wrong with me. But, I mean, that's just how confident. I just don't see it. But then again, I've been very confident on some good picks earlier this year that I've had, and they have not gone right. But, like I said, at the end of the day, I disagree with the rankings. I'll go ahead and I'm going to give my rankings in a few minutes. But in my opinion also, though, there's only 7 teams really left who have a chance. Unless a lot of stuff happens. A lot of stuff. And that includes Alabama, Clemson, Miami, Oklahoma, Wisconsin, Auburn, and Georgia. The top 7. And yes, people are like, some people are like, how do you still include Georgia? If Georgia wins the SEC championship, you betcha that they're going to be in the college football playoff. Because they will have either avenged themselves against Auburn, They're still going to have that win against Notre Dame. That win against Mississippi State's looking still good, considering that they didn't even drop a spot, which I personally disagree with. I think they should have at least dropped 1 or 2 spots. But, they will have deserved to get in. Or they will have beaten undefeated Alabama, which will also be good. I mean, I get why people say, oh, they got demolished by Auburn. I don't think anyone could have beaten Auburn today. I don't think even the hot Oklahoma team or hot Miami team would have beaten them. Personally, I think Auburn is right now still better than Miami. Just by a smidge. Just because I think their offense is better. The thing with Miami, and the weakness, people say they have no weaknesses right now. I've seen weaknesses on their offense. If you look at the past weekend against Virginia Tech, Rozier threw 3 interceptions. And that is not going to win you games. Of course, he was a lot better this week, but I think that Notre Dame's defense was not as good as Virginia Tech's defense. And if he plays a defense like Clemson, I think he will throw probably 2 interceptions or so in that game. The weakness definitely in Miami is their offense. But enough of that. I'll talk about that later. I'm going to go back and talk about all these games, like I said, that had an impact on the playoff. But anyway, that is just really what I wanted to talk about with these rankings. There wasn't much change at the bottom half, but at the top, of course, and then Clemson being 2. But then also one thing I wanted to talk about, Notre Dame is, in my opinion, is done. Done. There's no way they get in. And the reason why is Clemson and Miami is going to get in. Unless one of them chokes so hard in these next 2 weeks. And really any of, if I can see either of them choking at all, would be Clemson at South Carolina, because it's a night game in Columbia. And as much as I hate to admit it, Columbia is a tough place to play at night. But then again, while South Carolina is 8-3 or 7-3, their record is a bit deceiving. But I'm not going to go too much into that. And what was it? I don't know who even all Miami has to play. What they have to play? I think Virginia and then at Pittsburgh. They're probably their toughest game of those two. Those aren't easy games, but they're games they should definitely win. Which will set up an ACC championship game in Charlotte, whenever that gets in. Period. Oklahoma, they're not definitely in yet. If they lose to West Virginia in 2 weeks, they're out easily. Don't care if they win the Big 12 championship at that point, they're out. At least in my opinion, they're out. But there's a lot of stuff still that can happen in this game. In these next couple of weeks. Of course, next week we got the Iron Bowl. We have, of course, Oklahoma and West Virginia. That's not going to be an easy game for the Sooners. We have, I don't think that's real. Actually, I think that's it. Of course, this upcoming week we have Wisconsin hosting Michigan, but I don't think that's going to be too close. And then, of course, we'll have the SEC championship game as well. But at the end of the day, these are going to all play themselves out. It's going to happen. And also Ohio State, you could say, has a slight chance. But they need to beat breaks off Wisconsin. They need to. And it could happen. They looked a lot better last week against Michigan State. But if they barely beat Wisconsin, I don't see the Big Ten getting in. I personally would. People are going to say, I personally would put Notre Dame in. Notre Dame will have some better wins. They will have, They'll have beaten USC, and they will have beaten, NC State. They will have barely lost to Georgia. And of course, they got trashed by Miami, but then Ohio State got trashed by Iowa. Now, if you're telling me which team would rather get trashed by right now, I would say getting trashed by Miami, it looks a lot better than getting trashed by Iowa, who was unranked at the time and was only ranked for a week and then went back to being unranked. But fun fact for Ohio State, they should be happy. I actually saw this on ESPN. For the third college football playoff rankings, no team lower than 9th at that point made it into the college football playoff. I don't remember exactly which team that was, but so basically Penn State, USC, Pac-12 is still out of it by any means. Pac-12 still doesn't have a chance. No offense to USC. They do, but they need so much to happen. They need Clemson and Miami to lose in these next, both actually, to lose these next 2 weeks. They need Oklahoma to lose to West Virginia. They'll need Wisconsin to lose to Michigan. They'll need Ohio State to lose probably to Michigan. They'll need Notre Dame to lose to Stanford. And then maybe we can say they get it. But they're still just, it's just so hard to see them getting in. At that point, I'd put even maybe UCF as a chance to get in. If UCF isn't in the top 10 if all that stuff happened, I would cry foul to the committee. That would just be ridiculous, in my opinion. Anyway, you know also who I just noticed who made back into the top 25? Boise State. This isn't the same Boise State program since Chris Peterson left for Washington. Who, by the way, surprised they're even still in the top 25 after that loss to Stanford. But good to see Boise State back in the top 25. Another was it 3 group of 5 teams that are in? Yeah, so you got Boise State, Memphis, and UCF. Good for them. Anyway, that's enough of the college football playoff rankings. Said all I've said about them. Like I said, they're going to play themselves out. But now let's go back into the games that really affected the college football playoff. We're going to start off with Auburn stunning Georgia, who was last week the number 1 team in the country. And I've gone back. I wasn't watching this game live just because I was at Clemson and Florida State. Or Florida State, I meant at Clemson. But here's what I've taken away from this game. Georgia, and I know a lot of people who watch this will probably agree with me, Georgia wasn't able to establish their run game, and it killed their offense. 46 yards rushing is not a good sign for Georgia. If this were Oklahoma, it'd be different because you have Baker Mayfield. But Jake Fromm's a true freshman. He's been a good quarterback, but don't get me wrong, he's not Baker Mayfield. Auburn made them throw the ball. That was their game plan, I feel. And that's what any team's game plan should be against Georgia. Take away the run and force them to throw the ball. And they got after Jake Fromm, and he did not have a good day throwing the ball either. They pinned their ears back and came after him. I mean, I feel bad for Jake Fromm, but if you can't run the ball, and their offensive line really couldn't protect either. Georgia's offensive line has got, I think, was it 2 or 3 freshmen on there, so that's not going to help them. But then also, what else I took away from this game was Jared Stidham. I've been kind of on him. I thought he has been inconsistent all year. But, what was it? I mean, he actually looked pretty good. 16 to 23, 214 yards, 3 touchdowns, 0 interceptions. Also rushed for a touchdown. He's finally starting to get comfortable with this system under Gus Malzahn. And I think that's going to help Auburn down the stretch. When I watched him in person when they came up to play Clemson, he looked very uncomfortable. He was not settled into the system yet. And you could see, I mean, there's a reason Clemson sacked him 11 times. Well, it's partly because of his offensive line, but it's also his decision making. He's getting better with that. I mean, we've seen what he can do. We saw how good he was at Baylor. And now he's starting to turn back more into that guy that he was at Baylor. I don't think he's still been great this year, but he's better. And that's important for Auburn down the stretch. That was the one thing that was kind of hurting them. I mean, Kerryon Johnson had another great game, was it? Over 150 yards rushing. He had a touchdown catch as well off a screen pass. He played very well too. And one thing people forget about when Clemson played Auburn is Kerryon Johnson was out in that game. I'm not saying Auburn necessarily would have won that game, but it could have been even closer. And it would have changed the game because Kerryon Johnson is a difference maker. If you watched him against Georgia, he was incredible. He was making guys miss left and right. He just has a power. He's just so versatile. He's like the whole total package. He's a great running back. I love watching him play. I'm not like an Auburn fan by any means, but watching him play, it's very impressive to watch him. He's got the agility, he's got the power, he's got the speed, everything you can ask for in Kerryon Johnson. And, it's going to be helpful, like I said, helpful also for Auburn down the stretch. And a back like that is really going to hurt a team, going to be tough for Alabama to go against, especially with all the injuries they have on defense. But like I said earlier, Georgia, and another thing, but like I said earlier, Georgia's still not out of it. But also another thing that hurt them in this game was they couldn't tackle. I saw a lot of missed tackles from Georgia in this game. And it's I don't know why, because this defense has been playing great all year. But I think it's partly, well, I'll give that to Kerryon Johnson for being able to make a lot of guys miss. But it just seemed like in this game they were having a hard time tackling. But I think, I've seen other people's, at least on the college football playoff show, the guys at ESPN said that I don't think anyone would have beaten Auburn in that environment that day. It wasn't going to happen. I agree with that. But like I said, Georgia's still not out of it. Auburn is definitely in it now, but they cannot afford a slip up. They shouldn't this week. I think they're playing Louisiana or Lafayette or Monroe, one of those two. And of course they have to beat Alabama, and they'll have to beat Georgia again. I guarantee it will not. That will not be that close again, or not be that or lopsided again. Georgia is going to be able to make or correct their mistakes. Kirby Smart is a great coach. It's only his second year, but he is going to adjust, and he's going to find ways to get his running backs the ball. Maybe it'll be on screen passes. Maybe it'll be on passes, just little quick throws out of the backfield. I guarantee if these two teams meet in the SEC championship, this could easily be the other way around. I guarantee it will not be like this lopsided again. Auburn is definitely the best team or most complete team I think Georgia's played, because Notre Dame, even though they beat Notre Dame just didn't have the passing game. Auburn has the passing game. And that's really... And then also they have the better defense than Notre Dame, who could actually stop the run a little more. Anyway, enough of that game. Georgia, unfortunately, and I'm sad for this, just for all my friends who are dog fans as well, just because I grew up a diehard Georgia fan, so this hurt me too. I want to see Georgia do well. And remember, this is Kirby Smart's second year, so he has got this program still moving up, and Georgia fans should have nothing to worry about, in my opinion. It's going to go uphill from here. And they still, like I said, have a shot to make it into the college football playoff. Meanwhile, there was another game that featured a team who's no longer in the college football playoff, and that was Notre Dame going to Hard Rock Stadium in Miami Gardens to take on the Hurricanes. And Miami just blew them out of the stadium, or ran them out of the stadium. Not even close. From the get-go. Notre Dame didn't score till the fourth quarter. This game was ugly, and turnovers were a huge difference in this game again. Notre Dame had 4 turnovers again, but one more. Miami forced 4 turnovers again. But the problem was, and this was kind of, it wasn't the problem, but it was kind of the same situation that what Auburn had to do. Miami had to do the same situation. They had to take away Notre Dame's ability to run the football, because Notre Dame, that's their bread and butter, running the ball with Josh Adams. Dude didn't even have over 50 yards in this game. And Brandon Wimbush did not look good throwing the ball. He really hadn't been needed to throw the ball this year. He's really been fine just being able to run. And this game was an example where he got exposed to that. And Miami's defense did a great job with that, enforcing 4 turnovers and keeping them to under 106 yards, I believe, rushing, and under 200 yards passing. So Miami's defense, though, these last couple of weeks have been the real deal. I'm very impressed. I'm interested to see, though, can they keep this going down the stretch? I think they can, but I don't expect them to also force 4 turnovers every game. When they play Clemson in the ACC championship, I don't expect Clemson to turn the ball over 4 times. That's just not Dabo Swinney football. I don't see it happening. But I mean, it could. Don't get me wrong. It easily could. But Miami's offense didn't look great, but they were good enough. They did have over 300 yards, and they had some good plays, but it was also thanks to those turnovers setting up a good field position. And of course, one of their touchdowns was a pick 6. But, I'm still not overly impressed by them. No, what was it? Rozier was solid performance, but not great. I personally... He's definitely, if you force him into you could easily force him into mistakes. I mean, Virginia Tech did that. Heck, he threw 3 interceptions in that game. Then also, one thing I also want to say, did anyone see that stadium for Miami what was it, the Saturday night? That is, I think, the most full I've ever seen a stadium, Hard Rock Stadium for a Miami Hurricanes football game, ever. It was packed completely. Even for Virginia Tech, it wasn't completely packed. That game, it was packed. Like, That is the first time I've seen Miami finally have that full home field advantage in so long. And and I'm not going to lie, it was awesome. It was so cool to see Miami actually, and I'm so happy for their players just because I don't think they've ever gotten the experience just ever in any of their football games. A packed stadium. Of course, it doesn't help when you play an hour from campus, but that was awesome. That was just incredible. I am amazed by the Canes fan base right there, finally getting to show up, and they have a true tough home field advantage. Now, of course, they really haven't been tested on the road. These next two, what was it? And that game against Pittsburgh won't be tough. And then basically, when they play Clemson in the ACC championship game, that's going to be basically a road game because Charlotte is 2 hours up the road from Clemson, and North Carolina and South Carolina, and basically Charlotte is on the border of North and South Carolina. You know that stadium is going to be majority Clemson fans. Heck, last time I was in Charlotte, it was the same way. Even when they played UNC, it was like, 3/4 Clemson, 1/4 UNC. So that's basically going to be a road game. But at the end of the day, Miami still is looking very good. Like I said, I think they're still definitely looking better than Clemson. But can they keep it up is a thing. And for Notre Dame, in my opinion, overall though, they're still out of the playoff chase. But they need a lot. They can get back in, but they need a lot to happen. And it was from a lot of stuff I said earlier. But anyway, enough of this game. I've said all I need to say about that. Oklahoma. Oh, they took care of business against TCU. I mean, TCU had the best defense in the Big 12. Oklahoma didn't seem to care. Over 500 yards. Or was that 550 yards? 38 points. They didn't look like they missed a beat. They looked incredible. It's Baker Mayfield played very well. And again, who looked also really good for them? Rodney Anderson. He looks like he's starting to become the next more like Joe Mixon kind of back because he's versatile. He can make catches, except he doesn't beat his women. Promise you that. But sorry, that was maybe uncalled for there, but enough. Kind of a funny joke, yeah, ish. But he made 2 catches out of the backfield, or 2 touchdowns or reception touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns. Had over 100 yards receiving and over 100 yards rushing. So he's kind of becoming that next guy that can help Baker Mayfield out. And they ran for over 200 yards in this game, by the way. 50 yards, of course, were from Baker Mayfield, but majority of those were from Rodney Anderson. And, of course, also threw for over 300. This Oklahoma offense, a lot of people just like to refer to them for being able to throw the ball. They're balanced. They can run, too. Rodney Anderson is showing that this team is very balanced on the offensive side of the ball. And as far as their defense goes, that's what's still the issue for them. They looked a little better. Of course, points-wise, they looked a lot better. They gave up 20 points compared to giving up 52 last week against Oklahoma State. But then again, TCU's offense isn't nowhere close to as good, in my opinion, as Oklahoma State's. They also give up over 400 yards. So, I don't know what to think about it. I will say it looked better. Did it look as good as it looked against Ohio State? No. Still, no. Not that good. I'll give respect where it's due, but definitely not that good. I don't know. I don't know what to say with this Oklahoma their defense, though. I think if they get into the playoff and they play a team like Clemson or Auburn, they are in trouble. Because we've seen Clemson be able to do stuff on offense when they're in all cylinders. And their defense, if they make the playoff, is going to be completely healthy on the backside of the ball. And and Oklahoma does not fared well against Clemson in the past. Of course, it doesn't help that they have their former defensive coordinator, Brent Venables, at Clemson, who basically probably knows every move that Lincoln Riley's going to make. And, of course, Auburn as well, because they have both the defense and the offense to match Oklahoma and slow their offense down enough, and their defense wouldn't be, I don't think, able to stop their offense either. But then also for TCU, they're going to make it. They have if they win out, they're in the Big 12 championship game. They can still have a chance of redemption. And I think if they play each other again, I guarantee it'll be closer. I don't think Gary Patterson is going to let Oklahoma score that many points against his defense again. He's a great coach, and I respect him as a coach. But, sorry, I had to yawn there for a minute. I don't know why, because I really am not tired. But, this isn't over to TCU. Their playoff chances are basically over, but they have a chance still to win the Big 12 and ruin Oklahoma's chances to make the playoff as well. But anyway, those are all the top 10 games. I've gone over all I need to on those, in my opinion. Now we will go on to Wisconsin handling their business against Iowa. This is a game I picked Iowa actually to win. Yeah, I was stupid for doing that, but I did notice a lot of things in this game. Despite having 4 turnovers, including 2 pick sixes they gave up, Wisconsin won this game 38-14. You know why they won this game 38-14? Well, it starts with the fact that they were able to hold Iowa's offense to a total of 66 yards of total offense. 66. You heard that. When I first looked at that, I was like, what? Isn't this the same team that gave up, put over 400 yards against Ohio State last week? I'm just wondering if Iowa had, a little hangover from that game, because I'm like, no offense, Wisconsin, and their defense has been good all year, but that good? I know. They should have at least gotten 100 yards. I don't know. But you know what concerns me, though, for Wisconsin? It's Alex Hornibrook. 3 interceptions in this game? Yeah, I think he threw 3 touchdowns, but 3 interceptions in this game? Was it? Iowa might have been able to take advantage of all those. Ohio State will. I promise you that. Urban Meyer will not let them not score on offense like that, or not let them score 0 points on offense against Wisconsin. I don't think there's any way. I don't think Ohio State's as good, but I think Wisconsin could be for a rude awakening against Ohio State, because we saw how good this Ohio State team looked this past weekend. They dominated Michigan State. Dominated them. And then here's also the thing for Wisconsin. If someone can take away Wisconsin's ability to run the football and make them throw, they are in trouble. They cannot throw the ball. Hornibrook is not the person you can just rely on if you just need to basically go air out. You can't expect him to be able to carry your team. He's just not that guy. No offense, Alex Hornibrook. I'm not trying to bash him or anything, but I just don't see it. I mean, when you throw 3 interceptions like that, you're not going to be able to do so. You're not going to be able to win football games. I mean, if there's an offense like I said, if they were to play Auburn right now, I don't think they'd win. If they played against even Clemson, even though they haven't looked great, I don't think they'd win. Even Miami, heck, even Oklahoma, I don't think they beat them. Because I think TCU's defense is probably just as good as Wisconsin's. I just don't see it. I just still am not impressed, even with this win. Yes, they forced a lot of turnovers too, and people will say, when they beat Michigan this weekend, that's not going to mean anything. No offense. Michigan is terrible. Yes, they're 7-2. But look at who they've beaten. And tell me how that is good. 0 wins against teams with winning records. Their 2 losses, like I said earlier, have been embarrassing. This game won't tell me anything. I will believe Wisconsin deserves to get in the or the end of the college football playoff if they beat Ohio State in the Big Ten championship game. At that point, I will say they totally deserve it. I will. Until then, I still just don't see it. It's just, what was it? Their offense has too many mistakes. Yes, Jonathan Taylor's been great, but if a team like we saw what Auburn did against Georgia and what Miami did against Notre Dame, one of those teams can take away their ability to run the ball and make them one-dimensional in throwing it, they are not going to be able to win games. Their defense won't be able to just make enough plays. Their defense has been solid all year, but I don't see it. And against a team, golly, I gotta quit yawning. Against a team like Ohio State, I wouldn't see them winning. But anyway, enough of that. That's just the things I took away from this game. Their defense did play very well, though. You gotta give it respect. what was it? And they also, I think, had a fumble return for a touchdown on defense. I think they forced 4 turnovers or 3 turnovers. Even though they lost the turnover battle in this game, I just think this score is a little bit deceiving, in my opinion. But their defense still looked good. Don't get me wrong. But anyway, enough of that. Now, while all these other games were blowouts and this weekend was disappointing, there was one good game in these top 25. And that was Alabama hanging on to beat Mississippi State. And, this game was it was a good game. Alabama had to score with 25 seconds left to win this game. But it showed that Alabama has some issues. And here's what I mean by that. Their defense just did not look good. They didn't. This is the Mississippi State team against teams like Auburn and Georgia who got absolutely smacked around. Of course, this game wasn't Starkville. I'll give them that. But at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts completed 10 passes. 5 of which were to Calvin Ridley, who basically bailed him out in this game. He didn't score any touchdowns. But 5 catches for 157 yards, that's going to really help a team win a football game. And of course, they helped them also that Nick Fitzgerald apparently doesn't know how to throw a Hail Mary and threw the ball out of the end zone at the end of the game. Don't know how you do that. It's mind-boggling to me. But Alabama, at the end of the day, did get the job done. But, Jalen Hurts, if I'm Jalen Hurts, if I'm Nick Saban, you got to get him out of the habit of just trying to find Calvin Ridley. I get it. He's his top target, but I think he's also forgotten that he realizes that he doesn't have O.J. Howard anymore. He doesn't have Ardarius Stewart anymore to help him out. He needs to find and develop those new receivers and not just Calvin Ridley. Of course, he didn't throw to Calvin Ridley for the game-winning touchdown, but that's still very concerning. And then the defense struggled. The injuries are killing them. Auburn's definitely has what it takes to beat them. I'm not trying to bash Alabama in any way. I respected what Nick Saban's done for this program. But this team, it just doesn't look as good as teams in the past. Their schedule has been soft. They have beaten LSU. They have beaten Mississippi State. But I don't know. I really don't know. It's something about this team looking at it when I went back and watched this game. It just did not look like the Alabama team I saw earlier this year. Just not as dominant. But who knows? This is Nick Saban ball club or coach football team, and they're still easily in the hunt, and they still are undefeated. They've done a good job with that, and so at the end of the day, they get all the credit they deserve, which is they're undefeated, and there's a reason why they won. This was showed when this team's backed into a corner. How will they respond? They responded. They won the game. So you do have to give them credit with that, knowing how to win a close game. Really haven't had that this year. But anyway, enough of that. Enough of the games. Those are all the games I just wanted to talk about that had an effect on the college football playoff this week. Now we're going to move into our top Week 11 performances. And then starting off on offense, of course, I mentioned this guy earlier, Rodney Anderson of Oklahoma. 23 carries, 151 yards rushing, 2 touchdowns, 5 receptions for 139 yards and 2 touchdowns in their big win over TCU. Malcolm Perry of Navy, 33 carries for 282 yards and 4 touchdowns in their big win as well over SMU. And then, of course, Calvin Ridley of Alabama, 5 receptions for 171 yards in their big win over Mississippi State. And for honorable mention, we're going to go with John Wolford of Wake Forest and Alexander Madison of Boise State. Then defense, of course, we got Jaquan Johnson of Miami. 8 tackles, 1 tackle for loss, 1 interception, and their big win over Notre Dame. Damian Baber from Nevada. 2 tackles, 3 interceptions, 1 fumble return for a touchdown, 1 punt return for a touchdown, and their big win over San Jose State. And then Bradley Chubb of NC State, 8 tackles, 4 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks, and their big win over, Can't even remember who they played. Boston College, that's who it was. And their big win over Boston College. An honorable mention will include Joshua Jackson from Iowa and Bobby Okori from Stanford. Now, that's basically, like I said, I love to give these guys the credit where they deserve. These big standouts are important for these games, because otherwise, if these teams didn't have their big performances, these teams might not win. I'm not saying if Ronnie Anderson didn't have the game he had, who knows, Oklahoma might have not won. If Malcolm Perry for Navy didn't have the game he had, I know they wouldn't have won, because they barely beat SMU. But anyway, enough of those. Now we're going to get on to the Heisman Watch. And basically, what was it? It's still Baker Mayfield's anyone to win. It's not even a debate, in my opinion. How people can say that he has a chance, or that maybe Bryce Love, even Lamar Jackson has a chance, because he does have over 3,000 yards passing and 1,000 yards rushing. Lamar Jackson, here's what I have to say about Lamar Jackson. He's a good player, but he's not as good as he was last year. Sorry for that, guys. I'm still recovering from a sickness. I've been trying to avoid that cough, but I had to let it out. But Lamar Jackson, we've seen him play against good teams this year. When we saw him play against Clemson, he was absolutely shut down. Yes, he did have some. He's had some great games this year, and he's not that much worse than last year. But he hasn't showed up for the big game. Heck, he might lose to Kentucky again. His team's 5-4. Not that impressive. Or is it 6-4? Not that impressive, if you ask me. And then, of course, Saquon Barkley, of course, is still. I'll keep him in there. Kind of falling off. It's sad. There was people saying he was already won the Heisman Trophy in October. And I'm not going to lie. I thought he was on the way. I was happy for him. He's a great player to watch. He's falling off, man. It's just sad. But Baker Mayfield right now, clearly the favorite. Not even the debate. He's really going to have to slip up to open the door for someone else. And I think the only one who can get it is Bryce Love. I just don't. Well, Lamar Jackson, the way his team overall as a whole has performed, it's going to hurt him just because of that. And for him, don't get me wrong, 3,000 yards passing and 1,000 yards rushing again, it's very impressive. I'm not trying to take that away by any means. Good for him. But at the end of the day, I still think it's easily Baker Mayfield's to lose, and I think it's not even going to be close. This dude is playing on a whole different level compared to everybody else. Not even the debate. Anyway, enough of the Heisman talk. And like I said earlier, I was going to give a Week 12 preview, but then I realized there's one top 25 matchup in this game. And I told you who I already think is going to win. So we're just going to go ahead and skip that. I do have some picks, though, for teams that I think these could be good games that include top 25 teams playing unranked teams. But I'll tell you about who I'm going to pick, though, in momentarily. Let's get to, though, these Week 12 picks. And we're going to start off Minnesota at Northwestern. PJ Fleck's first year in Minnesota. They've been all right. They're 5-5, but I think Northwestern is they've been playing well as of late. Of course, they beat Michigan State a couple weeks ago. I do like the Wildcats in this one by 2 touchdowns or so. And then, of course, Fresno State at Wyoming. Now, this is the reason I have this game in there is because it's 2 7-3 teams, and of course, Josh Allen is a big NFL prospect. He started out the year kind of slow, but Wyoming's gotten it together as the season has gone on. I'm going to take them in this game by a touchdown here. I like the Cowboys in this one. I wanted to move up to 8-3. Army at North Texas. Army 8-2. North Texas 7-3. North Texas actually is favored in this game. But I'm going to go with Army. They had a big win last week against Duke. I think they're going to win again. I like the Black Knights in this one by a touchdown or so. Another good game for them, but I hope they could end up this season with 10 wins, and that'd be really good for that Army program. Navy and Notre Dame, always an intriguing game these last 10 years or so. Of course, at one point it was a 44-game losing streak for the Navy against Notre Dame. Not the case anymore. I think this will be a close game, but I do think Notre Dame does bounce back and gets a good win against against the midshipmen. I like the Irish in this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns in this game. But anyway, then Texas at West Virginia. This is another good game. I like the Mountaineers in this one, but Texas should keep it close. But the thing is, though, the offense of Texas is still not there yet. I just think Will Grier is just going to be able to get it done against this Texas defense. I don't think he'll have his best day ever because this Texas defense has played well all year. But I do like him to have a very solid day against this Texas defense. I got the Mountaineers winning this one by 2 touchdowns or so. Cal at Stanford in the big game. Not just Stanford, number 22 Stanford. This team has gotten back into it. And remember, this Cal team absolutely destroyed Washington State. I don't think that'll happen again, though. I don't think they're going to destroy Stanford. I mean, this is also at Stanford. We've seen some crazy stuff in this game. Of course, the crazy lateral, the ban on the field. that game is always going to be that play will always be one of the greatest plays of all time. But I like the Cardinal in this one. I like them winning this one by 2 or 3 touchdowns or so. Bryce Love's going to have himself a day, and he's going to get barely reel in Baker Mayfield for the Heisman race. But like I said, Cardinal by 2 or 3 touchdowns. UCLA at USC in the Battle of LA and the Battle of the Victory Bell. This one I think is not even going to be close. I think USC absolutely dominates UCLA in this one. Josh Rosen, I mean, he looks pretty good last week. He threw for over 400 yards, but only a touchdown. I like, though, the USC in this one by 3 touchdowns or so. This one won't even be close. Kentucky at Georgia. This is another one that's kind of like it could be close, but I still think Georgia's going to bounce back. A good win for them against Auburn. I don't see in any possible way, shape, or form of them losing this game unless they have all their tailbacks get hurt or some big player on defense getting hurt. Like I said, dogs in this one, 2 or 3 touchdowns in this one. Michigan at Wisconsin. This is the final pick I'm going to make. And the reason I have to, of course, pick this one, it's the only top 25 matchup of the week. And I just don't see this one being close at all. I've not been impressed with Michigan all year. Wisconsin at least has looked good somewhat on offense. Michigan's offense is an absolute disaster. I like Wisconsin in this one by 3-4 touchdowns even in this. I just don't even. Michigan's record is very deceiving. Wisconsin at least had a good defense as we saw last week, and their offense has been somewhat solid. And James Taylor's going to have, I think, still a very productive day. But anyway, that's enough for the picks. Now we'll go on to the upset alert I have this week. And it's not a ranked team this week. Usually I have it as a ranked team. Not this week. And that is, this week it's UAB at Florida. Florida's an 11-point favorite in this game. And that's, I think, even generous. Because UAB, this is their first year back after being gone for, 3 years as a program. They are 7-3. And we've seen nobody's going to the Swamp and beat them. Of course, a few years back, we saw Georgia Southern go into the Swamp and beat Florida without completing a pass. And this team might be worse. And I think UAB could easily win this game. I'm not going to say they certainly will, but Florida will not cover the spread in this game, I think, in my opinion, at all. Their offense has been atrocious this year, and I think UAB has definitely got a great chance to beat the Gators in the Swamp in this one. They're going to be a huge win for the UAB program. All right, guys, that's going to do it for the Cost Sports Show for this week. If you like the show, or watching the show on YouTube and you liked it, please be sure to give it a like and subscribe. And also comment on what some thoughts on what you thought, or maybe disagree with me on the show. I'm always happy to talk about college football with anybody. And, of course, this weekend I will be at Clemson versus the Citadel. I mean, this weekend I'm not going to be paying too closely against these unless an upset happens. Then I'll be happy to talk about that next week. I just don't see really many upsets happening. But it should be hopefully a decent weekend of college football. But the weekend after that will help change some of the story with the Iron Bowl. And, of course, the weekend after that with the conference games will definitely be the icing on the cake, deciding who's going to get in. But anyway, guys, enjoy this weekend of college football, and I will see you next week here on the Cost Sports Show.